Siddhartha Khosla is the composer that helps bring out those intense emotions on NBC's Emmy-winning drama, This Is Us. I'm Denton Davidson for Gold Derby. Siddhartha, you've now wrapped 5 seasons, and the music's really, become sort of a supporting character at this point, in the fact that, it feels familiar, but it continues evolving from season to season. What musical changes did you want to bring to season 5?
I think that the whole idea of the show is about, at its core, it's about this nuclear family. But you begin to see as we move season to season is that family is not just about the nuclear. It's about the joint. It's about it's about the tentacles also that grow from that family and all the different people that are in interesting ways connected to the family. So as we progress season to season, I've sort of like come up with like a bigger palette and a bigger sound, a more expansive universe for the score. I'm definitely leaning into like a lot more atmospheric elements. I kind of sort of model the score in some way after like Brian Eno in some way. It's sort of like he's a big influence for me. The idea of taking organic instruments like, my acoustic guitar, for example, or a piano, and having strong melodies, but then giving them atmosphere through effects and other things that make it really wide and expansive. So this season especially, definitely like the biggest sound I've gone for so far.
Yeah. And are there specific characters that immediately click for you in the way that they would sound for you to score? Like Jack, for instance, sort of has a theme song at times. Is that how you feel about every character, or are you going really on the script at the moment?
It's a great question. And when I first started scoring the series, I used to have sort of character specific themes. And that's kind of where I came up with that. That's the Jack theme, right? And so, but as we learn with the show and sort of like and in terms of like Dan Fogelman's sort of like design of it all, I like having themes that feel big picture. So that might have been written for Jack, but that ends up becoming sort of like their family theme in many ways, because their family sort of hinged on Jack in many ways, right? And so now I'm sort of, when I'm coming up with a score for an episode, I try to find an episodic theme that I sort of weave in and out of the whole episode. So you'll hear sort of the same melodic content like 15, 16 times. Right. Through various sort of instrumentation. So it feels different enough, but it also feels big picture, like it feels more filmic that way. So yeah, there was a theme I had for Randall as well. And I applied that this season in his birth mother episode, for example. And it was something I had not used since season 1. And I kind of thematically brought it back as sort of like this. It was a very cathartic episode for him, so it felt appropriate to do that.
And are you able to see much of the rough cut before you submit the music, or are you sort of going off what Dan says in the script?
I get to see rough cuts early, just because, the music has become, as you've said, like it has become a supporting character in a way on the show. And so the editors also like to cut with my score as well.
Right.
I'll see very early sort of, versions of things. And sometimes it may even be just like a picture, like a photograph of something. And I will just go and write. So I do it in 2 ways. One way is I'll just like be inspired by a scene or a picture of something, and I will write a bunch of score, send it in, and the editors can play with it. And then other times I'm actually, really scoring to the picture. But yeah, I think, because now we're also relying a lot on these silent montages too, where the music is like guiding us through. I kind of need to be in really early in that process.
Particularly when, the episode that comes to mind is when all the babies are born and they're all going in the car seats, and right. We have all those montages. But then you have other episodes like Brotherly Love, where it's just sort of intense, and maybe do you just decide, okay, we need to pull back music on that and let the the script really work?
Yeah, that's a great question. In Brotherly Love, the performances between Sterling K. Brown and Justin Hartley, as adults sort of like trying to figure stuff out, felt really effective dry. And I remember talking to the editor and saying, let's pull back on, it'd be expected that I score some of those areas, but I think it might actually feel no score sometimes can be score, because it depends on how you use it. And in that episode, I scored all of the younger versions of those characters, so that when we got to the present, it was just stark. It was just dry, and we were living in those spaces between them, which made it feel even more tense. So yeah, we've really, like, over 5 seasons now, really figured out a good system of sort of like, when should we score and when should we not score? And sometimes we're finding it really effective to just lay out in that episode particularly.
So you've been nominated for 2 Emmys for This Is Us, and I think you mentioned last year that Dan Fogelman had actually sent the song back to you to rewrite about 10 times before you finished it. Is there anything that he's repeatedly sent back to you this season that might be a good luck charm for you?
I'm trying to see. No, he normally doesn't. He normally doesn't. He doesn't say much about the score. He's normally, knock wood, he's been happy. I think now we sort of have a process, and there's a lot of trust and faith in what I'm doing, what he's doing, what everyone's doing, that he sort of lets it be a little bit. So this season, fortunately, I've not had to rewrite too much score. But there's been, some episodes with a ton of score. And I think for him, as long as I'm thematic, as long as an episode feels like it's not 20 unrelated pieces of score that are just going there to score each individual moment, and instead there is a hook,
right, that's
sort of like permeating through that episode, he's happy, and I am too. I think it's just a fun way to score.
And is there a particular episode that you're looking to highlight this round of the season, or one that you thought was your favorite?
I mean, there were so many good episodes this year. I mean, it feels weird to like highlight something of my own work. I feel like I put my life and love into this show in every episode. As I've said before, and you probably know, is like, Dan's a good friend of mine from college, and so we know each other really, really well. And so, I every one of these episodes is like, is his story and the story of the writers on the show, and so it's hard for me to pick. I mean, I think the birth mother episode was a fantastic episode that Kay Uyogan directed, and that was Kay's directorial debut. And that was the story of Randall's birth mother, Laurel, where we sort of get closure on that side of the story for him, and they go to New Orleans. I mean, that episode, the performances in that episode, I think about it and like it's raising the hair on my arms right now. The performances were so beautiful, and I felt like I got to do really, really good work in that episode as well. I got to take Sterling K. Brown's theme from season 1 and bring it sort of to fruition in that episode.
And when you're recording the music for these episodes, were you able to get in studio with other musicians, or are you working from home, especially over the last year? How has that been for you?
Well, This Is Us is a very unique, different from my other scores in that I record basically everything in my home studio, down to, so like I have like my guitar. That's what you hear on the show, right? So I have my guitar, I have my piano right next to me. I have this wooden table. That's all the percussion you hear is me just doing that with this mic, my AKG 414 on, layering it. I feel like I'm making a record, like an album. And that's everything is recorded at home.
So it's much more of a recording artist feel for you.
Oh, there's no question. Yeah, I feel exactly. That's a great way of putting it. it feels like I'm making an album every week. I have a cellist, Ginger Murphy, who plays on the score, and she records remotely. Anyway, we were doing that pre-pandemic already, so nothing in my process has really changed on this show. And yeah, it does have a recording artist sort of feel. Like I feel like it's very much me, you know, what I'm putting in. I sing on the score. I have a Juno 60, that synth. I have a synth on the show. So it's all, and that's an analog synth. So it's all very sort of homemade. And it feels very, you know, as you said, it's recording artist on the show.
Yeah. And what has your background, you know, what about your own background brought you to the sound that you created for This Is Us?
My family, the sound of the show for me in terms of the score is really, it's my family's story in the music. You know, my parents came to this country in the late 70s from India with $8, and they were new immigrants that came here looking to kind of live the American dream. And it was very hard to be a new immigrant in this country, and they had to send me back home to India to be raised by my grandparents for the first couple of years of my life. And I was without my parents, and eventually, when my parents had the right footing down, I could come back. And so my early childhood was just like listening to like old Hindi songs, and like melodies that were like na, 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 da, 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 stuff like that. And that's actually what I just sang to you, was sort of like the Indianized version of my Randall theme from the season. That's the music I heard in my head. So on this show, which is sort of like about this larger picture of life, it's the idea, it's this larger connectivity idea, this idea that like your great grandparent could have made a seemingly benign choice in their life, but it ended up having huge impact on the generations that follow, right? And that's what this show is in many ways. It's like the butterfly effect, but disguised in a family, right? And so this show made me sort of like go back to my own past and my own childhood, my own family's history. And the score on the show is so deeply Indian. You know, you can hear it in the na na na, ah, da, da, da. That's Randall's. Ah, la, 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 la. That's his theme. And I remember bringing that to Dan, this sound, and I was like, is it too Indian for broadcast television? And he was like, no, dude, just do your thing. You know, it's very you. And in an interesting way, it ties the whole story together. It keeps it like this unifying, universal idea of family, of life, of love, of this larger connectivity. So yeah, it's honestly like I think about it, it makes me emotional, because I'm just like, I can't believe we have only one more season of this. You know, this is I just cherish every moment I get to work on the show, because it's very me, and it feels very natural, and it seems to work with the story really well. And it's been an absolute dream to work on this.
Yeah, well, I mean, the fans are going to miss it. Certainly. I'm sure it's been a whirlwind for the entire cast and you as well. So congratulations on all of your work on This Is Us, and good luck to you this Emmy season. We encourage all of our viewers to go to Gold Derby, subscribe to our page, make your Emmy predictions on goldderby.com. And I just want to thank you again for chatting with me, and even playing a little music for us. What a treat for us to get a little show from you today. So thank you so much.
Of course, and thank you for all your support and all the passion you guys put behind like covering all this stuff. It's just it's so nice to have the work highlighted too. So appreciate it.
Yeah.